he was zoning out. Maybe I was imagining it, but it kept happening almost every day. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and see the glow of his laptop across the room. He'd be sitting upright in bed, looking in my direction. The second I'd move, he'd look back at his screen. I never said anything because honestly, I felt stupid bringing it up. What was I supposed to say? Hey, are you staring at me while I sleep? That would have sounded insane, so I ignored it. Then things started disappearing. Nothing valuable, just random things. A hoodie, a notebook, a phone charger, a bottle of cologne. Sometimes they'd reappear days later in places I'd already checked multiple times. I blamed myself. College was stressful. I figured I was just being forgetful until my notebook disappeared. That one bothered me because it contained notes for an exam that I was studying for. I tore the room apart looking for it, and I found nothing. Then a week later, it magically appeared on my desk. The weird part wasn't that it came back. The weird part was that someone had clearly gone through it. Pages were bent, sticky notes had been moved, and one sentence I'd written months earlier had been underlined in red ink. I knew for a fact it hadn't been there before. When I asked Eric about it, he acted confused. He even helped me look through the notebook. At the time, I actually felt bad for accusing him. Now I know better. A few weeks later, I started dating a girl named Jenna. Things were going great. She'd come over to the dorm occasionally, and Eric was always polite around her, at least on the surface. One night after he left the room, she looked at me and asked me something strange. Has your roommate always been like that? I asked her what she meant. She hesitated before answering. He's always watching you. I laughed, mostly because hearing someone else say it out loud made it sound ridiculous. But she wasn't laughing. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. He doesn't look at me when I talk, she said. He looks at you. After that conversation, I started paying more attention. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. At the dining hall, at the library, at the gym, he somehow always seemed to be around. The strangest part was that I'd never tell him where I was going. Yet somehow, he'd always show up anyway. One afternoon, I skipped my usual study spot and went to a different building on the opposite side of campus. Less than 30 minutes later, Eric walked in. He looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see him, or at least he pretended to. That's when I started getting nervous. Then my friends started acting differently around me. One friend stopped answering my texts entirely. Another accused me of talking about him behind his back. I had no idea what he was talking about. Eventually, he showed me the screenshots. The messages were coming from an account using my name and profile picture, but the account wasn't mine. Whoever made it knew personal details about my life, old stories, family members' names, things I'd only told a handful of people. I reported the account immediately, but by then the damage had already been done. People believed it was me. That night, I told Jenna everything. The staring, the fake account, the missing belongings, all of it. She listened quietly. Then she suggested getting a camera. At first, I thought she was overreacting. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. So I bought a small motion-activated camera online, and I hid it in a shelf facing my side of the room. I didn't tell anyone, not even Jenna. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, Nothing happened. The third night, I got a motion alert while I was studying at the library. When I opened the footage, my stomach dropped. Eric was standing beside my desk, just standing there, not touching anything, not doing anything, just staring for nearly 4 minutes. Eventually, he opened one of my drawers and started digging through it. Then the video ended. I convinced myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe he was looking for something. Maybe he was overthinking it. Then the next night's footage came in. This time, he opened my closet, pulled out one of my hoodies, and held it for nearly a minute before putting it on. The footage was worse after that. He sat on my bed, then he lay down, then he closed his eyes, like he was pretending to be me. At that point, I was terrified, but the final recording was what convinced me something was seriously wrong. The camera activated around 2:30 in the morning. Eric walked directly toward it, then he stopped and stared straight into the lens. I don't know how long he stood there because I couldn't finish watching. The timestamp showed almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes of him standing perfectly still, looking directly into the camera, as if he knew it was there. The next day, I confronted him. The second I mentioned the footage, he completely lost it. At first, he denied everything. Then he started crying, then screaming. Then he blamed Jenna, said she was ruining things, said she was taking me away from him. The things he was saying made absolutely no sense. I grabbed some clothes and left immediately. I stayed with Jenna for at least the next few days. When I came back to the dorm later that week, Eric was gone. His side of the room was completely empty. Campus housing said he had left unexpectedly. Nobody seemed to know where he'd gone. A week later, Jenna stopped answering my texts, then my calls. Hours passed, then the entire night. I barely slept. The next morning, she finally contacted me. Police had been interviewing her. Apparently, Eric had been sending her messages from dozens of fake accounts. Some had existed for months. Others had only recently been created. When authorities searched his belongings, they found something that still creeps me out to think about.